New beginnings. Xi Jinping is elected president of China. A plea for patience. Tunisian president calls for tolerance as new cabinet is sworn in. And CAR rebels launch a fresh offensive against the government. It's time for Africa Live. Hello and thank you for joining us. I am Penina Karibe in Nairobi. Also coming up, Zimbabweans brace for a steep hike in the cost of fuel. And revenge mission. Ethiopia's team prepares for a return to the venue of their worst ever cross-country defeat. China has a new president. The National People's Congress has elected Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, as the president. The 60-year-old Xi Jinping is expected to lead the country for the next decade. Han Bin reports.
习近平同志当选为中华人民共和国主席。
The handover of power in the world's most populous nation. Xi Jinping is elected as president by nearly 3,000 deputies of the National People's Congress. He's said to lead China for the next decade. Congratulations from his predecessor Hu Jintao. The NPC has given Xi Jinping the platform to lay out policies to build the prosperous nation, harmonious society and beautiful China, which he describes in public appearances.
The new leadership has attached great importance to practical meanings and promotes the down-to-earth manner. That's a new trend of governance. A new image of the leadership has been given to the people. I believe they will bring about new progress in the future.
Shortly after becoming General Secretary of the party, Xi Jinping made his first tour to the southern city of Shenzhen, the country's forefront of reform and opening up.
We will continue to walk along the right road and rejuvenate the country and make the people better off, and deepen our reforms to a wider scope and higher level.
When it comes to political development, he calls for active, steady reform while stressing the rule of law and exercising state power according to the constitution. When it comes to the party's survival, Xi Jinping has promised to put power in an institutional cage, signaling that officials at all levels are under scrutiny.
The problems among party members of corruption, being out of touch with the people, and emphasis on formalities must be addressed with great efforts.
Xi Jinping spelled out his vision for the country at an exhibition themed The Road Towards Renewal.
Nowadays, everyone is talking about the China dream. In my point of view, realizing the great renewal of the Chinese nation is the Chinese nation's greatest dream in modern history.
On the diplomatic front, he has stressed never to sacrifice core interests while properly handling international relations. And he's impressed people with his working style and personality.
With Xi Jinping's election as China's president, the once-a-decade power transition is complete. On several recent occasions, Xi Jinping has shown a strong sense of responsibility towards the future of the nation in the face of numerous challenges. Now the public's watching how his new policies will achieve what the new president calls the Chinese dream of rejuvenation. Han Bin, CCTV, Beijing.
And for the latest, we are joined by CCTV's Guan Xing in Beijing. Xin, Xi Jinping has been elected. What has he said will be his priorities while in office?
Well, today Xi Jinping officially assumed Chinese presidency, and he's expected to deliver a speech at the closing session on Sunday. But from the past few months since he took office as the General Secretary of the CPC, we can see that he gave higher priority to reforms and self-discipline of the party. He made the so-called New South tour to Shenzhen, the front line of China's reform and opening up, and stressed that China will continue to deepen reforms and innovate its economy. And he also gave high importance to self-discipline of the party, launching a very publicized anti-corruption campaign. And from this year's annual NPC and CPPCC sessions, you can also see that the new leadership gives higher priority to social well-being. Issues like environmental protection and food safety are high on the agenda, an indication that new leaders are going to focus on the quality of growth in the next decade. Back to you.
Shin, what is the public expectations of the new leaders?
Well, the public expectations on the new leaders are very high. They come at a time that China has grown into the world's second largest economic powerhouse, but it also facing rising challenges both from domestic and overseas. And in the following several days, the NPC will continue to elect top state leaders and appoint key government officials, including premier, vice premier, state councillors, government ministers. And the new government are expected to follow their predecessors in combining stability with growth, which is considered an increasingly challenging issue. Analysts say the new leaders need to continue to carry out reform and opening up with greater courage and wisdom. Back to you.
And finally, Shin, the new President Xi Jinping is set to visit Africa on his first foreign trip. Is this an indication, perhaps, of where the Sino-African relations are headed?
Well, China's Foreign Minister Yang Jiechi said during the press conference at the National People's Congress that Xi Jinping's visit to African countries in March will be a very important diplomatic event. It shows the importance that China attaches to the China-African ties. And during he met with the chairperson of the African Union Commission in February, and she said no matter how situation changes, China will attach high importance to China-African ties and be a reliable friend and trustful partners. And analysts say his visit to African countries will provide opportunity to further deepen the relationship, cooperation and exchanges and boost economic ties between the two sides. Back to you.
All right. Thanks very much for joining us, Guan Shin, live in Beijing. Now, President Moncef Marzouki has sworn in a new government to pull Tunisia out of its political and economic crisis. He urged Tunisians to be patient, saying there was no magic wand to solve the country's problems. The oath-taking by Islamist Prime Minister Ali Larayev and his cabinet took place after lawmakers approved the new team in a vote overshadowed by the death of an impoverished young street vendor who had set himself on fire a day earlier. In 2010, another young street vendor, Mohamed Bouzizi, set himself ablaze in a drastic act of protest against police harassment. This ignited a mass uprising that ousted dictator Zine El Abidine Ben Ali. Economic and social difficulties were the key factors that brought down Ben Ali's regime, and 2 years after, he fled to Saudi Arabia. Unemployment and poverty still plague the North African country.
This government does not have a magic wand to resolve the problems of poverty and unemployment that has accumulated over 3 decades because of criminal policy built on corruption and marginalization. But it has an unbending will to confront this tsunami of problems.
The Central African Republic government has issued a statement saying that an attack by Seleka rebels on a southern town showed they were still intent on occupying the country despite agreeing to a peace pact in January. The government condemned the attacks in a statement on Tuesday. This comes after military sources reported that the rebels launched the assault on Bangassou, which lies on the border with the Democratic Republic of Congo, early on Monday, leading to the government withdrawing its troops. The rebels are accusing President Francois Bozizé of failing to honor the peace deal. The Monday attack came in the wake of a raid at the end of February on the northern town of Sidou. In spite of the Libreville Accord, the rebels are still demanding the release of political prisoners and the departure of foreign troops stationed in the unstable and very poor landlocked nation. And for more details on the CR situation, we're now joined by Joab Toka, a professor at the American Graduate School in Paris. Joab, why do you think these two sides, the CR government and the Seleka rebels, are not honoring the agreement they signed in January?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure we're speaking about the two sides not honouring the Libreville Accord. For the time being, the reports coming all the way up to Europe indicate actually initiatives in two cities next to the Cameroon border. We're speaking about Gambu and Mangasu, and still, as far as my impression is, the French authorities and the Quai d'Orsay are checking to get somehow clearer information on the terrain as to what really is the situation in these two cities, as well as an overall interpretation of what it really takes in terms of the question you just put to me. We know that the sort of compromise which has been achieved in January followed the sort of readiness of President Bouzizé to look for the construction of a new government which would have elements of the opposition and the rebels. Now that happened a long time ago when you take into consideration the cascading series of events in mid-January with the French military intervention and in such a way a destabilization, a new situation overall the entire Sahel, Western and Central Africa. So one has to fit all that in terms of local interests of the groups on the terrain in southeastern Central Republic of Africa. Now this is not a very easy exercise to do right now.
Joab, France was fully involved in the Libreville talks that got the two sides to sign the peace agreement, but nothing has been heard from the French government on the ongoing conflict. Why?
Yeah, you're right. Actually, there is sort of an official silence over the last 48 hours or so since the very first reports regarding initiatives in the terrain in southeastern Central Republic of Africa to that sense. Well, my intuition is that the French are just studying the situation in the terrain, looking for better information to come over, and then they will react. As a matter of fact, we are told one way or the other in a discreet way that a French reaction should be there, should be available shortly. Once again, one should look at the larger scale, especially if you're looking at the analysis of French behavior, because of course the mainstream set of issues is that of the Malian issue right now, in terms of the way the French are looking at it. So for a long time, many observers have been saying that the situation in Mali and the military intervention in Mali and political solutions for the Malian situations would be, one way or the other, part of the overall Sahel, Western Central Africa set of problems, set of crises. Well, this could be one more illustration of what that observation actually meant.
All right, Joab Toka, thanks very much for joining us on Africa Live. Well, let's take a short break. When we come back, the U.S. government pledges more support for Libya. And Qatar cuts aid to troubled Egypt.
We follow the latest trends in global politics, economics, culture and sport, and how Africa fits into the global picture. You decide what's important.
We need a trade justice.
Africa's future will be determined by Africa.
For women's equal opportunity, for a better life.
We have to change something, and it's not the outsiders.
Talk Africa, a new voice for the world.
Welcome back. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has pledged that the United States will continue to support Libya in their difficult transition after the ousting of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. Kerry made these remarks during brief comments to the media in between meetings with the Libyan Prime Minister Ali Zidane on Wednesday. Libyan PM Zidane visited Washington for meetings with Kerry and senior White House officials. He thanked U.S. President Barack Obama and the U.S. for its contribution in the effort to defeat Muammar Gaddafi and stressed the importance of positive U.S.-Libya relations. President Obama on Wednesday nominated a veteran U.S. Middle East diplomat as ambassador to Libya, filling a post that has been vacant since Ambassador Christopher Stevens was killed in an attack in Benghazi in September.
That the United States will continue to stand with Libya during this difficult time of transition. We will cover a great deal in our meeting, but in the meeting that we just had, we talked about the difficulties of this transition period and the challenges, but also the wonderful assets that Libya has. Great, intelligent people, not that big a population, and wealth through the oil resources. Libya is a country that can win this future, and we believe in that.
I would like to confirm that our relationships will be taking the best track and will achieve the interests of the American people and the Libyan people. Thank you very much.
Qatar has announced it will give no more aid to Egypt, closing the flow of much-needed aid and investment to a country plagued by a growing debt and budget deficit, in addition to faltering foreign currency reserve and political instability. The expected IMF loan has also been postponed, making the decision by Qatar look more damaging to the development plans of the Egyptian government. CCTV's Yasser Hakim has the details.
Qatar's relations with Egypt is a special case. It had virtually no investments in Egypt because of non-secretive personal hatred between former President Hosni Mubarak's family and the family of Qatar's Emir Hamad bin Khalifa. After Mubarak stepped down, Qatar deposited $5 billion in Egypt's floundering foreign currency reserves of $15 billion. It injected $13 billion worth of investments in 2012 and pledged $18 billion more over 5 years to the impoverished economy. And this should make it popular with Egyptians, but it's not the case.
The people were unhappy with Qatari's interference in our affairs. It was accused of wanting to buy Egypt's treasures like Suez Canal and antiquities. Also, many secret trips by Muslim Brotherhood leaders to Qatar were unveiled, which showed it was the financier of Islamists raised to power.
Media and public opinion continued to aggressively criticize Qatar, but one article by Nader Ferjani in the state-owned Al-Ahram paper was said to be the cause of the aid flow being cut off.
It was a staunch attack on the Emirates and the royal family itself, coming from the mouthpiece of the government. It's a huge blow to the government, which is depending on the Emirates as the only country that is pumping aid and investment into the turbulent economy.
While some say it's a huge blow, others see it as a minor setback and Egypt can still survive.
Good conditions, political conditions, for their assistance. This is completely refused, as I said before. Egypt is a political giant. We have some problems, for sure, but we can manage.
The government, meanwhile, issued a short statement emphasizing that Qatar was not planning any new investments in the first place. Experts understand that Egypt has lost a major contributor, but they stress that the panic within the government now is a sign of weakness, as no nation depends on one state for its economic development. This is Yasser Hakim for CCTV, Cairo.
All right, let's pick it up from there and head straight to business now. Terian joins us with the latest. Terian.
Thank you very much, Penina. Now here's what's coming up on Biz Africa. Zimbabweans brace for a steep hike in the cost of fuel. Hello and thanks for joining us. I am Terry Ann Chibet. Now, the heads of the customs services of the BRICS member countries, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, met for the first time in Limpopo province, South Africa this week to discuss common problems and outline ways to extend cooperation. Following a three-day meeting, the customs chiefs signed a protocol on cooperation ahead of the 5th BRICS summit taking place in Durban from the 26th to the 27th of March. To speed up customs procedures, the BRICS representatives agreed to unify their software, organize preliminary informing and stimulate electronic customs clearance of cargo. With the development of trade, the work of customs authorities acquires particular importance, especially in fighting vices such as substitution of invoices and declaration of the value of goods, grey schemes as well as smuggling. Now, Zimbabwean motorists are bracing for a jump in the price of fuel by as much as 25% following a decision to use fuel funds to finance the country's referendum and election later in the year. The increase comes in the wake of reports that the government is considering withdrawing an appeal for funding from the UN, which has set a number of conditions to unlock the funds.
Cash-strapped and struggling to raise funds for polls, Zimbabwe's finance minister is forcing ordinary Zimbabweans to dig deeper into sparse pockets. An appeal to the United Nations was met with stringent conditions which Zimbabwe is unwilling to meet. Earlier this year, the government sent a begging bowl to the private sector in search of the $80 million required for the referendum. To help shore up reserves, it has now increased excise duty on petrol and diesel by 25% and 20% respectively. Predictably, this has not gone down well with ordinary Zimbabweans.
I wish the government could do something about it, because if you look at it, everything is going to go up and it's going to affect us.
Fuel prices affect us taxi operators. As a result, we will now have to increase our prices.
At least they must give us, they must do some sympathy to us.
Analysts are also up in arms, arguing alternative sources of revenue could have been sought.
Zimbabwe is a resource-rich country. There's need for the government to maximize and utilize opportunities that they can get from either diamond sales, gold sales, platinum sales, because Zimbabwe is a resource-rich country. There's no need to penalize and punish the ordinary citizen.
Players in the petrol sector are likely to pass the increase on to consumers, triggering fears of a wave of price hikes across the board, plunging an already overburdened society into even more dire straits. There is a saying that democracy is expensive, and Zimbabweans are realizing just that. This election set to cost them much more than they had anticipated. Farai Mwakutuya, CCTV, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Well, let's now take a quick look at how the markets opened today, where we saw a mixed bag in a number of the counters across Africa. In Nigeria, the all-share index opened slightly upwards there, 0.02%. In South Africa, the JSE all-share also trading upwards at the opening of the markets, just 0.3%. In Nairobi, the NSE 20-share index trading downwards 1.5% at the opening of the markets today. And in Egypt, the EGX traded flat to 5,317.63 points. Well, on that note, we wind up business news for now. Back to Penina for more on Africa Live.
Thanks, Terry, and we'll catch up with you later on in the day for more. Coming up in sports this hour. Revenge mission. Ethiopia's team prepares for a return to the venue of their worst ever cross-country defeat. All right, a look at sports. And athletics world governing body IAAF is planning to set up a temporary testing facility in Kenya to help them achieve effective testing in the country. Due to the remoteness of training bases, it has been difficult to transport and test samples to an accredited laboratory within the required 36-hour time frame. Blood testing is recognized as the preferred way of catching athletes using EPO and growth hormones. Last year, Kenyan athletes came under the spotlight as stories of widespread doping were reported, with the former world champion in steeplechase Moses Kiptanui adding his voice to these concerns. This led to an anti-doping officials visiting the country unannounced last month to investigate the claims. Kenya is renowned for its long-distance prowess. Now, the city of Bydgoszcz in Poland holds bitter memories for Ethiopian athletics. In 2010, the Ethiopian cross-country team lost all gold medals to their arch rivals Kenya. In 2013, the team will have a chance to avenge that defeat when they return to the Polish city for another edition of the World Cross-Country Championships. CCTV's Groom Chala recently visited the country's team on its training ground and reports on the team's determination to ensure they succeed in 2013.
Ethiopia is a country of legendary long-distance runners, from the pioneer Abebe Bikila to the recent kings and queens of the track Haile Gebrselassie and Kenenisa Bekele and Trunesh Dibaba, all making this country of mountains renowned as an athletics powerhouse. They continue, however, to battle for ultimate superiority in athletics with their neighbors Kenya. In 2013, the first Battle of Wills comes during the World Cross Country Championship this month. 3 years ago, in Poland, Kenya handed Ethiopia their worst ever defeat in cross-country championships to date by winning all gold medals on offer. While Ethiopia returned to winning ways in subsequent championships, they returned to Bydgoszcz with a memory of defeat still vivid. And that is why this athletics team is working hard to avenge that loss when they return to the Polish city for yet another edition.
I, with the help of God, expect to win the title again, and I trust with the kind of training we are having, the results will be good.
This is Jan Meda, a long-lived traditional training ground for the elite and beginner runners of Ethiopia. This is where most of the country's most successful athletes toiled earn their selection to the team. The women's team will not be graced by the presence of the world-famous Olympian Trunesh Dibaba, but they still aspire for success in Poland.
As far as I am concerned, this is not about individual success. It is an issue of national success. So because we are going to represent Ethiopia, we are working hard to raise the flag of our country high.
Many professionals on the field of athletics condemn the Ethiopian slow response in incorporating young athletes in big tournaments like the Olympics or the World Athletics Championship. This seems to be one of the reasons behind a number of runners changing their nationalities, making the country reduce its chances of success on the international sports arena.
We have many young athletes, and with these athletes also, maybe we'll be very successful in Poland also with these young athletes, and they are very good. And you can see the talents, and they are good talents. We have it, and so we can replace them. We can replace them, and so we don't have any problem with this.
The Ethiopian cross-country athletics team, which contains 24 athletes in both the women and men categories, will be heading to Poland next week. In a country where long-distance running is a culture, seeing young runners in fields like this all over the country is not unusual. And if they can be used very well, then the future for the Ethiopian athletics can be brighter. Grumjala, CCTV, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
And we'll leave it there for now. Thanks for watching Africa Live. I'm Penina Karibe.